Welcome to Front Row Backstage, the show that takes you behind the velvet ropes of the media world. I'm LCC student Greg Trimmer, and each week we'll explore the stars you see on screen, stage, and radio, and the tech and talent making the magic happen behind it. From unsung heroes to spotlight sensations, we've got the stories you won't hear anywhere else. So grab your popcorn and let's dive in. Welcome, guys. Today we've been joined by Steve Simonson, an accomplished audio engineer, producer, sound designer, educator, and live sound technician with a career spanning decades. Steve's journey began as a young drummer, evolved through experiencing with analog recording, and led to a thriving career in audio production. Welcome, Steve.
Hello there, Greg. Nice to see you again,
man. Just a couple little icebreaker questions. So I did some research on you, believe it or not, before this.
Good old Wikipedia.
And found out before you ever got into audio or AV or anything, you were a drummer.
That's correct.
Pretty young age.
Yeah. I got started young.
What drew you to that at such a young age?
Well, I mean, it really goes down to where I was at when I was growing up. I grew up in the Detroit area, went to a school called Clintondale, the Clintondale school systems. And even when we were in elementary school back then, you could sign up for an instrument. So around fourth grade or so, most of my buddies are like, hey, we're going to join band. We're going to get, okay, cool. Let's check it out. So I actually ended up picking up the trombone. And so when I started off in fourth grade, I was playing trombone. And then I got an ear infection, and I really couldn't play the trombone anymore for a while. And so the next school year comes along, and I'm like, I can't really play the thing. What should I do? And the band people are like, well, take home the slip and talk with your parents and whatever you want to do. And so I all right, looked at the various instruments. I'm like, I can't really blow anything. They said, what's this percussion? They said, well, that's drumming. I said, I'll do that. And that was it. Sometime in August before fifth grade.
That was history.
I started doing that type of thing. And Clintondale had a very strong music program. I mean, I had private lessons with a local parent in the schools after hours and stuff like that. I went to Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp. We had music theory classes in high school. It was pretty advanced kind of stuff. I didn't know it at the time. It was just, hey, it's fun.
I've heard a lot of people talk about Blue Lake, actually. So
it's a great place to go.
Shout out that place, apparently.
I spent a lot of time there, and it was really instrumental. And never mind. It was a big part of me becoming a better musician and all of that type of stuff, and really thinking that I could do this as a career, as a vocation.
Yeah. So just one more little icebreaker question. I did find out a little bit that you kind of started out your early days performing with like festivals and weddings and stuff. Like, what is one of your most like memorable moments from that time?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, because I was working with another friend of mine. His name's Mark. He's on the Detroit area. He's actually a financial analyst, but he is still playing as well. He's a pretty well accomplished keyboardist down in the area. And so we were like this weird little Italian band wonderkind type of thing. It was me and him, and later on when his brother got a little older, his brother playing guitar. And we would play, it was drums and organ, and he had the whole thing. It was a B3, which is a very large wooden organ, and the bass pedals that go with it.
Beautiful.
We had a Fender Rhodes piano, a Hohner clavinet, and one of the original mini Moogs, and he ran all that stuff through a lovely Roland amplifier. And so it was like a 2-man, 3-man band, and we were playing pop hits of the day. But him being of the Italian descent and stuff like that, we'd play a lot of Italian stuff and Italian weddings, and we played this Italian festival back in the day. Out of that came an invitation to play a certain wedding for some certain gentlemen at a certain golf club someplace. And it was a very interesting, heavily Italian event. And we were like the American band. It was like they had this, just like you'd think.
You were the foreign novelty to them.
Yeah. Well, so the kids want to dance. They want to play bassas and stuff instead of all the most the Italian type of for the standards of that era. So it was a very interesting event. It was the number of people who were there, and the way it was all set up for a kid. It was pretty it was pretty overwhelming. And I don't know anything about any of this stuff, but it really looked like something out of The Godfather. It was really kind of like that. I don't think any of those people were probably involved in any of that. Of course, it just seemed that way to me.
Right.
A big fancy event like this.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
for
one
sure.
stuck with me. They had like
fun.
those buffet pans that are out there, and they had like ducks in one of them. Like chunks
Wow.
of duck, and it was
Fancy.
I was 14, 15. I mean, I had never seen
Most
anything
14,
like that.
15-year-olds haven't ate duck yet in their life.
No, most of them. That's right. So those are and then there's many other festivals that have come along since then. But from that era, that's the one of the working with Mark and the old Taste of Honey band. What a crazy silly name.
So yeah, so just getting into some meat here, you were a part of like a band or whatever when you were drumming, and you had some sort of vehicle that you were able to start hauling the PA gear, and then somehow that led to passion and sound down the road. Explain that a little bit. Go into that a little bit. How did you get from, hey, I'm a drummer playing festivals and stuff, and I'm the actual musician, to, oh man, I'm being the one that makes them sound good?
Well, again, that's a very kind of strange thing to kind of think about in the ways, because the way that things go back and forth, and it's one of my favorite stories to tell in class is, hey, I was the drummer, and so of course I've got the van, I've got the station wagon, I got my drums, and then they shove the PA in there as well, and we show up to the gig, and there's of course nobody but the drummer and the bass player, maybe because he's riding with me, and then we got to set the whole thing up and all that. So that's a little stylized, a little fancified. I've been interested in this stuff for a long time. I remember in 5th grade, again back around the time I started to play drums, we had a science fair, and I was interested in recordings and records, and I learned about Edison's first phonograph, and I actually built one out of a coffee can and a orange juice can and a needle, and not a needle, I used a little nail for a needle, and it was a strange, you got a book out of the library, science fair projects, and build Edison's phonograph. Later on, I was introduced to strangely enough, through a neighbor's dad, French avant-garde music, which was basically tape loops in that, which led me to understanding later on what the Beatles were doing with a lot of stuff. And I always sort of recognized that the studio was something that early on, that it was a creative tool more than just a place to go in and have what you do captured. So
yeah,
it's all, it's kind of all tied in together. It really came about more or less in the early 80s when I came back to school. I started at MSU as a music major. The money ran out. I dropped out, moved home. I did a bunch of different jobs. That's a whole nother podcast, but I played in a bunch of different bands. It was sort of strange the way that worked out too. But when I came back, I decided I didn't want to major in music. I got into broadcasting at MSU. So I started learning that and learning all the engineering part of it. So not to age you at all, but okay.
I know a lot of your early time was working with analog equipment like reel-to-reel machines, cassette tapes, cassette decks, different things like that. What was it like working with some of that early equipment back then?
I mean, for us, that's what we had. That's just what we did, I mean, and again, the limitations of analog as compared to digital really force you to work in a different mindset, a different way. It's much more about, I mean, you can have some experimentation going on, don't get me wrong, but you generally go in with a goal of, we want to play this song, we're going to record it. And then you might do some editing or something like that and learn to do that. Then you learn how you can use the tape machines to do strange things like create echoes and that type of thing. And it grows from there. I mean, the thing about analog was being so linear. You really had to work in a way that you could go back and fix things if you needed to, and have that in mind, but kind of at all times. I grew up basically in the multi-track era. So the first stuff I did was 4 tracks, 8 tracks, that cassette decks, all that type of stuff. And we was mostly just goofing around at home with one of those 4-track cassette decks, till I got to college and that type of thing. So
so walk us through a little bit your experience transitioning from analog to digital, because like you've done both now, and like there was obviously had to be some sort of transition period changing from one to the other. And what was that like for you? Because you learned on analog and then had to learn this whole new world, like when it came about.
And at the time too, it was very different than it is now. Even it was much more computery. Everything was really cheesy graphics, and that you didn't really look at waveforms very much back in the day. Anything you did would have to render. If I wanted to change the EQ on something, I'd have to say, I'm going to get this file and I'm going to do this and this and this to it, and then I'm going to hit render, and I'm going to go get coffee and come back in 2 hours and listen to the bass drum, and then say, oh, I don't like that, and hopefully I hit undo, and then I didn't permanently alter the file. All these little traps and pitfalls. It's odd because digital came about right as I was getting into professional audio. As I graduated from school, I was working at a local radio station, a local recording studio. That led into one of the local music stores where I ran the PA department and that type of thing. But it was such a big shift for me, quite frankly, because I had to come out of thinking linearly, thinking about how this is going to go. I have to make these machines all line up and work, to if I get it all on the computer the right way, it's all going to come back just fine. And so it was a very big sort of shift of how I had to think about it in terms of workflow. The audio was, the same, really. EQ is EQ, compression, those type of things. But how you work them in the computers, and then learning the quirks and the tweaks and the pitfalls of various, DOS-based machines. Let's just say enough. That's enough. DOS-based editing is not for the weak of heart.
MS-DOS, people. MS-DOS.
Yeah.
If anybody remembers MS-DOS.
It's still with us. It's just underneath all the graphics and all that.
So you are an adjunct professor here.
That's correct.
You do live sound work. You do like studio recording work. How do you? Those are all very big things. How do you balance all that?
Well, I mean, yes, Lansing isn't exactly New York or Los Angeles, So I long ago sort of became one of these people in town who just started working different jobs. I mean, I had a job here and there. The only real full-time job I had in this, well, I had a couple full-time jobs. Mostly were at the local studio I worked in. At the time, it was called Harvest Music and Production, Music and Sound Design, I think now. Anyway, and at Music Manor. That's where all the other place I worked as a PA guy, and started doing live sound. That's where I really got into live from a engineering standpoint, as opposed to being a performer and something like that. So it was a bit of a learning curve there, different way of approaching things, but it just started to basically get to the point where I need to take this job. I'm going to do this. And I've got my full-time gig, but if I can go make pretty good money for working for a night, I may as well go and do that, right? Everybody wants to make a little more money, work a little extra, that type of thing. So I've been working in the gig economy now since the early 90s, and it's one of those things. You maybe heard me say it in class. One of my favorite things to tell people, is that just don't say no to honest money if you're going to be working in a gig life, because, you got to show up and make it happen. And even if it's maybe not your favorite thing and all that type of stuff, be the pro, show up, do the job, and you'll get more. So that's how I balance all of that stuff. As far as the headspace, I guess, if you want to think about the rational approach I'm taking to what I'm doing, they're all different. So they all just, kind of work out to be, I'm going to have to execute this way. It's sort of like that's another analogy I use, is I'm a pilot. I've got all this equipment, and now I've got to get my plane and my cargo from here to here and make it happen like this. So that's how I make a flight plan. I make a system diagram. I make a signal flow chart and all that type of stuff. And, just set it up like that. It's not very different. Once you get into it, this is what I'm doing now. So,
yeah. So just from a creative standpoint, I know you mentioned that a little bit, like, what kind of approach do you typically take in kind of finding, like, I know, like, they say it in this industry, that elusive, like, perfect sound, like, but genuinely, like, what approach do you take from a creative standpoint in trying to reach that point, whether it's in the studio or live settings? You can kind of touch it on both. especially with today's digital tools?
Well, the tools make it easier in a lot of ways because you can save things. Before, again, the days of analog, automation was Polaroid pictures and grease pencils on the consoles where you're parking the knobs and stuff like that. So with these days, you can make a setting and save it, and then you've got a really good baseline for this performer, whatever it is they're doing, whenever they're doing it, especially with live type of stuff. A lot of the live stuff I do is, again, festivals and that type of thing, and it's what I would generally refer to as what we call run and gun. I got just enough time, or another way to say it, not so blow and go. Although please don't blow into my microphones. That can damage them. But, so you get up there, this thing on, okay, and now you're singing. There's your cue, go. And I get to mix them on the fly. Hopefully we've had enough time to them hear at least something in their monitors that they want, and then we go. So that's a different thing when you're doing live sound like that. The digital tools help. I gave up a long time ago on trying to make the perfect sound. I know what I want when I want for me.
Right.
So as an engineer, I had to put my other hat on, switch my brain out, I suppose is one way to think about it, to say, now I'm here to help this person get what they want. So I try to talk to them, understand what it is they're looking for. It's very difficult sometimes because sound is so really subjective to how people hear it. And so when they say, well, it sounds a little too brashy, or it sounds a little too, gray. Well, what does that mean? So, I mean, so you start to think about those things and you just communicate with them and you work it out basically, often in sort of unspoken ways. You can see when I think my head says, I will think this might work. And so I'm going to take this knob and do this and make this change adjustment. And you watch them. And if they like it, they get into it. If they kind of are reacting, that type of thing, then you can say, oh, I'm getting where they want to go now.
Yeah.
We can continue to work with that. The longer you work with people, the more you understand them. They understand you. It's easier to communicate too. So,
yeah.
But then we just work it out. And the perfect sound is whatever works right then, right now. Let's go to the next record.
Right.
They're all different. They're all just here and now and gone,
Right. So jumping into your teaching career a little bit, what inspired you to start teaching audio production, and when did that happen?
June 1995, one of the people who worked at LCC here approached me and said, hey, I'm going to go on sabbatical. You want to teach a class? And I said, honest money, yes. It's literally that simple. Honestly, what happened too is that there's a little deeper backstory to that. When I was working at Harvest Productions, the LCC was running a recording studio class, a business amusing class, stuff like that, but they didn't have any facilities really. So they would rent Harvest. And I was literally the engineer for some of the early recording classes back in those days, the early 90s. So when they finally got some stuff up and running for themselves and they, needed extra help, this guy says, hey, I'm going to go off and do sabbatical. You want to teach my class over the summer? And I said, sure. And then a job opened up about shortly after that because this very building that we're sitting in was going to be built. And this guy who was working here at the time of the lead faculty for audio production knew that I had some background in this type of stuff and said, yeah, there's a job here that's opened up and I really think you should apply for it. And I became a part-time employee here in the audio media services area. And we designed the studio parts of this building actually and help build it. And so that was a very, very good thing to be involved in. And I'm really glad I did it.
I mean, the studios down there are beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Well, right here, this beautiful place too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is the cosmetics, but then the people don't really see, they see some of what we have here with these lovely microphones and great cameras and stuff like that. But the infrastructure is really important too. We were fortunate enough to work with good people and I had a great team that I was a small part of really in many ways. And we've been able to keep up with maintenance, and it's a great place to study this kind of stuff if you want to. I mean, I've literally have classes with 8, 9, 10 students in them sometimes. We'd like to get the numbers up there, but that's a pretty good student-teacher ratio, especially for this type of stuff. So it's a good thing to do. I really enjoy it, and I don't know. I just really, it's one of those things. You fall into things like that, and you don't really realize how much it's going to be something that you like. I didn't really think I was ever going to really want to be a teacher. That didn't sound like all that much fun. I'm going to be doing this. Be a rock star, dude.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
going to produce rock stars. So I'm going to tour the world with a band.
I want to go be Eddie Van Halen.
But it turned out that teaching was really, really fulfilling to me in a lot of ways, especially now that I've been doing it for a long time. I might get a call to work with the local union at the Wharton Center, and there's people I graduated with and worked with for years, and then there's former students right there on the deck too, pushing the boxes and loading in Shucked or Wicked or whatever it is this particular week, and come back 7, 8, 10 days later and take it all apart.
I think Shuck's in there right now, right?
Yeah,
it's like all about corn or whatever. I don't even understand.
It's supposed to be funny. We'll see. I don't know. It's just another show, man. Pack them up and maybe put them away.
Yeah, but so how do you think the ever developing digital technology in this realm has shaped the way that you teach students?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a lot easier to give people examples of things these days, a lot easier to move data and that type of stuff. That's what's made it better. I like some of our online tools because I used to slay so many trees. Oh my God. Papers and bookworks and workbooks and all these things. And it's just like, now it's online. If you want to print one out, sometimes it's more convenient, but it's not like I'm giving you 3 reams of paper every semester, so that's been a big difference. The audio technology, I think, is going to continually change. We've already seen some things that were predicted. I'm not much of a technology wonk like that. I don't get a chance to really dig deep into the stuff that's coming up. AI is already, going to change a lot of things in the industry. I think is
kind of sad.
Well,
to be honest,
it's going to, it's like, Mozart saying, "What is this recording?" No, you have to have the musicians play it fresh every time. So I mean, because maybe for him, maybe recording would be a weird thing. For them, Mozart and those cats, recording was writing the notes down on paper so somebody else could play it later. That's so it's an ever evolving thing. And what we do really, especially with music and this type of stuff, and into theater and all these type of artistic, theatrical type endeavors, is we're expressing ourselves now. And people are always going to find a way to do that, and they're going to do it differently than we understand it. AI can be a tool just like digital is. And there's lots of people who would swear up and down that analog's better. Vinyl's making this giant comeback. I guess cassette tapes are now enjoying a revival. Please don't. Just
don't, dude. Just don't.
Yeah,
cassettes can stay away.
Yeah. But I mean, digital. I love digital. It's cheaper. It's easier. It's allowed me to have the tools I need to do great things. You used to have a record company back in the day. We were shopping our band by sending headshots and bios and, cassette demos to record labels hoping to get known. Now, I mean, shoot, if we would have had Spotify and that type of thing back in the day, or, what is the other one? Bandcamp. I mean, you don't need that
Apple
anymore.
Music.
Yeah. You can put you can reach your audience, these days. So that's always my advice to folks who are creative and creators in that. I don't know, I shouldn't say that. Do it. Make it happen. Yeah. There's nothing holding you back. You should really just let your mind, your creativity flow. Do your best to make it the best it can be. Remember, at some point it's got to be done, and put it out there. See what the people think. I grew up in a live performance era. That's what I do mostly. Back in the day, as a drummer, and I get that feedback off the audience, and that's a very important part of how
that's huge.
Do the next thing. Yeah.
I mean, if a band goes up there and it's just dead and the audience isn't responding and they're kind of just standing there staring at you, that's not what bands are looking for.
No. And if that's happening to you, you need to get back in the woodshed. Yeah. All right, fellas, let's try and rehearse this a little more. Get better at what you do. So it's because the world it's tough out there. There's always somebody who wants to do this, and there's always somebody willing to take your place if you don't do it very well. So practice.
All right, well, we got a little quick rapid fire round of questions here.
Okay.
Just like quick answers. Favorite project you've worked on?
Boy, that's so hard. I mean, I did so many, but I'd have to say I did a project with a woman who I worked went to this church with, and she's a fantastic singer. She wasn't happy with it. She had a limited release, but it's just some really, really good stuff overall, or just all of it.
dream collaboration with any artist or producer?
Well, can I go into the people who've made not with us anymore and stuff like that?
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, I would have to say, definitely would want to work with Quincy Jones at some point if possible. That would have been a beautiful thing. Maybe Miles Davis, Coltrane. I'm a jazz person. I really like jazz. It's when I got started playing and all that. It'd be interesting to deal with some of those and work with some of those people, but just to be in there as an intern, even emptying ashtrays and bringing coffee and sandwiches, that would be be fine.
Most exciting piece of digital audio tech that you've used?
Oh man, I don't know. It's I mean, the first time I sat down at a thing and saw that it was at a radio convention and you could cut audio apart without a razor blade. That was revolutionary. But I think maybe recently we've revived our live sound class here, and we've acquired some digital mixing consoles, which I've used in limited work in the past a little bit. I'm just not really into that the big ones as it is. Anyway, we got a nice big one here, the Midas M32 Live, and trying to learn and get my head around that is pretty interesting. It's a pretty cool thing, and I could see how if I was doing a lot of live stuff, a lot of consistently, I'm going to work with this artist, it'd be a wonderful thing, like I've read about all of them are. But even just running in and run and gun, I don't know much about it, but I was like, oh, I know audio. I can make this happen. Call this up, push this button. Oh, here's the controls I'm familiar with.
I think one of my favorite digital consoles to work with for a live environment is the Allen and Heath D-Live S7000.
I know that those are getting big. We got a couple of, we got a Quantum here, I think, or something like that. Small one over in the black box. There's maybe it's an Advantis. I can't. Oh,
we've got a small one, a small Allen and Heath over in the black box. And then final, is there any piece of analog equipment that you still find irreplaceable?
Well, I don't particularly own any myself. I mean, I have an analog compressor that's just from left over from way back in the day. I actually have a 2-channel tape machine that probably used to belong to this college, and it was sold in the surplus store. The old Atari MX 5050. That's a wonderful thing, but it's up for sale, so it's not that I can't live without it. There's some certain analog microphone preamps, even if they're modern, that are very nice. I like this Avalon one that's out there now. It's been around for several years. I suppose I might get into some classic Neve preamps and stuff like that. I mean, if we're talking about analog microphones, they're basically all analog anyway. Some of those classic 50s Telefunkens and stuff like, oh yeah, I would.
Some of the older, I know they're kind of expensive, but some of the older Neumann.
Oh yeah.
Neumann U81s and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So just final question. Anybody getting into this industry that sees the vast career you've had, like what
most of it in this little town.
What advice would you give them to these kids that are aspiring to do and be someone like you someday?
Well, that's a very, very, very fine compliment. I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's very nice of you to say, and I do really take I feel responsible to some degree to helping people learn and grow. I really came across that as a musician, even the musicians learned you have to pass the torch on. So I guess there's a couple of things that go with it. Mostly, you got to be ready to go and show up and be ready to do what needs to be done to make it go. It's a show. We've got to put on a show. Let's make it happen. Be creative, think outside the box, and do your best to just show up and make it happen. Be prepared. Be ready to go. That type of thing. Do all the preparation you can. Keep yourself trained, well practiced. If you're an instrumentalist, practice your instrument. If you work in sound and that, read the manuals, work on the gear, refine your techniques, and keep doing shows. Just keep doing it because everyone's new, and every time you do something, you learn something new, and you meet more people that you can work with, and you might have some magic spark with somebody and create a great collaboration. And you started off, he was a lighting director and you were, doing some audio stuff, but you turned out that you wrote a great play together or something like that.
Yeah.
So keep your mind open, your ears open, and commit fully, I suppose.
All right. Well, thanks for coming to talk with us here on Front Row Backstage, Steve. It's always amazing. I only was in your class for a couple semesters, but I owe a lot of what I know about audio to you.
Well, you're very, very kind, and I'm glad. I guess there's two things you say when you're a teacher. You remember the good ones and the bad ones. Let's say I remember you for the right reason.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining and hearing about Steve Simonson and his vast career today. Thanks for tuning in to Front Row Backstage. We hope you enjoyed this week behind the curtains of the media world. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram for more information. And join us next week for more stories from the front lines of entertainment. Until then, stay tuned, because whether it's on stage, behind the scenes, or over the airwaves, the real action is everywhere.